Okay guys, back with another video. This one's a basics video to Clash Royale and a beginner's guide to it. It's for beginners, less experienced players, and for people just trying to get better at some of the fundamentals to the game. Here are 10 tips that I'm going to go over in this video, and I know that there's probably a lot more than this, but these are just the 10 that I chose to address. So the first one is managing your elixir. This is it's definitely one of the top tips ever, and managing elixir is something that you'll need in all stages of the game, throughout the whole game. This skill is one of the most important skills that you can ever develop in this game, because the goal of this game is to be able to spend your elixir in a more effective way than your opponent. And if you can't manage your elixir, then you're never going to get anywhere. So this is definitely a very important tip. The two sub tips on the side that you saw in black, the first one, if you had time to read it, said to not sit on full elixir, and that means having a full elixir bar and just sitting there and not doing anything, like I've done multiple times in this game. Don't do that, because it's a very terrible mistake that especially beginners make. Rarely do you see it up top, but this is definitely one of the big no-nos in elixir management. And then the second one was, do not waste all of your elixir in an offense, because you have 0 to defend with, and you need to at least save a little bit of elixir to defend. Okay, now we've got card interactions. This is a very easy thing to learn. Valkyries wipe out skeleton armies, wizard wipe out minion hordes. Don't send in a hog by itself to go attack inferno towers. These are easy things that you can learn. Now this, the inferno tower, for those of you who don't know, actually charges up its attack, so it does more attack over time. So do not just fireball it, you need to zap to reset the damage that it does. Okay, so my third tip has to do with spells. This is also very easy to correct. When using spells, beginners a lot of times will use spells on towers instead of using them on troops. And also here we see that hit the king tower, and a lot of times that happens in lower players, and that's a huge mistake, and also got very little value. Here again we see fireball and inferno does just about nothing. Fireballing a tower when you could have saved the fireball for the minion horde, and then he also had arrows, would just arrow the tower. So if you pause the video or look, he got about, let's say, 600 damage on the left tower, but then gave up about 1100 damage on the right tower. If he would have used either one of those spells on the minion horde instead of shooting at the tower, he would have gotten a lot more value. And so here we see more shooting spells at towers instead of using them to take down troops. So this is one of the beginning things in this video are the things that are easier to correct. Later on, I think it's number 6 and 7, where it starts getting into a little bit more advanced things. But these first 5, maybe 6, are definitely easy corrections that you can make. Okay, right here, zapping and arrowing, I was cycling so that I could get to fireball. This is how you need to use your spells. You have a wizard and a musketeer coming down, you fireball it, and they get 0 damage on the tower. So that was a musketeer that's 4 elixir and a wizard that's 5 elixir, and you used 4 elixir to beat it. So now you have 5 extra elixir on your opponent. So here, yeah, I guess you can do this if you want, just chunk a bunch of spells and lose, but I don't suggest it if you're trying to win. If you would have fireballed the troops, definitely would have been an easy win. Okay, the fourth tip is something that you're going to need for the whole game. It's offense. So the text on the right says, instead of putting your offense right at the bridge, place it at the back so that you can build up a push, because they're slow and you're able to build up more elixir in order to help out your giant. So I put the giant in the back, so I was able to use the minion horde to distract and kill the Inferno Tower, and then also put a wizard to help out the giant. Now this Inferno Tower placement, this fireball, both of those, like I told you earlier, there are going to be multiple mess ups in certain clips, and those are both very stupid, because if I would have fireballed the musketeer and wizard like you saw earlier, they wouldn't have gotten any damage on the tower, but they took the tower down about 2,000 damage because I decided not to do that. So here's another slow push at the back. Gonna have to address the Valkyrie, which is good defense, which I'll point out later. It's fortunate that place an Inferno Tower just to get shredded by Minion Horde, which you don't want to do that, by the way. So since I placed a slow push, a slow giant at the back, I was able to build up enough elixir to not only take down the Valkyrie with the Minion Horde, but also to place the witch behind the giant to help him in taking down the tower. So next is defense. Here's another card interaction you need to get used to. Do not send a skeleton army into a wizard. Here's another thing I also see down in lower arenas. Try not to defend a big push coming at you with a tank, like a giant or a golem. If it's a giant bomber, that's a little different because of his bomb that he drops. But do not just defend it with a giant, because it's going to get shredded, and then they'll have plenty left to also take down your tower. Okay, here, more terrible defense, placing a skeleton army into a poison, and then a panic Inferno Tower. Yeah, these plays are not ones that you want to make if you want to be on the winning side of this game. Okay, so the sixth tip, counter pushing. I'm also going to show you good defense in this, so I'll show examples of good defense and also how to counter push. So counter pushing is one of the most important parts of this game as well. You want to learn to use your leftover defensive troops and convert them into an offense. And this was pretty good defense, and in just a second you'll see a good example of how to counter push. So obviously this is very easy to defend. You also, another thing, you gotta know when to counter push. Don't just counter push anytime you make a defense and you defend well. You need to know when and where and how to counter push. So this tip is definitely something you can build on. So as you can see, I'm gonna defend with a witch and a baby dragon, which isn't the best defense, but it works out here. And what I do is I use the leftover defense. The baby dragon almost survived but didn't, but the witch did. And so I converted that into an offense by putting my giant in front of the witch to protect her. And now, watch how much damage I get. Now this play also, right here, with the minion horde right next to the witch, not a great play because arrows, they were very valuable arrows. Here again is a good defense. I use the baby dragon to distract the wizard, and so the skeleton army gets to go to town on the giant and absolutely slays the giant. And then I once again pop a giant in front of the leftover defensive troops, and this tower's all but over. Counter pushing is definitely one of the most important things that you need to learn if you want to be a good player. Tries to fireball, but it's way too late. Okay, so these are counter pushing is kind of an advanced tip. It's borderline basic, borderline advanced, but patience is probably one of the more advanced things that very few players have at all. And this is something you need to learn if you want to be especially good at ladder. So here you'll be able to see a decent defense. And here I'm not going to shove anything up there because I'm playing, like I said, I'm playing patient. You want to start games out by feeling out your opponent and knowing what cards they have and knowing how they're going to counter your deck. And so when you're patient, usually it will end up paying off. You don't make a bunch of stupid mistakes. So patience, the best way to practice this is just to start out games with troops in the back and just waiting for your opponent to kind of start the game off. So eighth, another one of the more advanced tips is knowing your opponent's cards. Whenever you're playing this, you've got to remember your opponent's cards. If you don't remember whether your opponent is using a giant or a hog rider, well, it's really not a hard thing to remember. You got to remember 8 cards. That's not a difficult thing to do. So we've seen a giant, we've seen a zap, and we've seen an inferno tower. I believe that's all we've seen so far. And so we've got to remember that for later on. Now we've seen a witch. Oh yes, and we saw a skeleton army when he countered our hog. So you got to be thinking these things when you go throughout the game, and you got to think about how you're going to counter his cards. Okay, now we see archers. I believe that's 6 cards. The Inferno Tower, Giant, Archers, Witch, Zap, Skeleton Army. I think that's all we've seen so far. So we know he has Zap, so we place our Skeleton Army high, and now we also find out that he has Lightning. So that is 7 that we know he has. And we need to remember them so that later on in the game we can play our cards more effectively. So we're ready for the Skeleton Army because we knew he had that, and zap it and easily take down the tower. There's the archers again. So I know he's going to be coming in with a giant because that's his win condition. That's how he's going to win games. I'm pretty patient and place some stuff in the back because I know he's going to try to build up a push. This high inferno is so that he can't lightning everything. I want to place it in a place to where if I put down my musketeer, he can't lightning my musketeer, my inferno, and my tower, because if he lightninged all of that, he would get crazy value and would end up probably winning the game. And so also another thing, we saw the 8th card, the minion horde. Didn't have to remember that a whole lot because he just played at the end of the game. But that's the type of things you need to do. You need to be focusing on remembering your opponent's cards, and you need to think how you will counter the cards later in the game. Think ahead. That's very important in this game. Okay, the 9th is kind of related to knowing your opponent's cards. It's saving certain cards of your own for certain circumstances. You need to make sure to save your counters for their win conditions and save certain spells for certain troops, such as saving Zap for Skeleton Army, or maybe if you have arrows, saving that for a minion horde, or if they have 3 musketeers, saving a fireball for them. So here we'll see a good defense. And so we got to remember what cards we've seen, and we've got to think. We've got to save certain cards for certain circumstances, like the tip says. We know he has giant, so we're going to save our Inferno Tower for that. We know he has a witch, so we'll save our Valkyrie for that. And we know he has skeleton army, so we'll save our zap for that. And whenever the circumstance comes, we'll have our card ready, and so we'll be able to punish him with that. Now this tip isn't always going to work. You're going to need to use specific cards at different times because of how the game plays out. But for the most part, if you can, try to do this as much as you possibly can. Right here we're going to send in a hog, and the zap is kind of unnecessary, but like I said, we saved that zap for a specific circumstance. And the circumstance was the skeleton army, and we took the tower. So the 10th tip is upgrading cards. You see the attention. Do not upgrade all of your cards just to level up your king tower. That is one of the dumbest things that anyone could do, because you're rushed and you're a high level and you have terrible cards, and that's not what you want to do. Try to only upgrade about 16 cards. Upgrading more isn't always bad, but try to stick with about 16 cards that you upgrade, and stick with those to probably the rest of the game. So right here you see these cards I'm selecting. I'm getting all the win conditions. This is not a deck. If you try out this deck as if it's a deck that anyone should ever use, then you're gonna get beat very badly. This is just win conditions that you can build a deck around, and I suggest if you want to do well on ladder, you need to pick a deck and stick with it for probably the rest of the game if you want to get really good. If you just want to mess around and you get bored playing the same old deck, then do whatever. But if you want to get really good, you need to stick with the same win condition. Now here I'm going to actually build a deck around the giant as a win condition. I don't actually use the giant, but this is just an example. So I have Inferno, which is it's definitely one of the best defensive cards. In my opinion, it might be the best defensive card. And then there was Skeleton Army, Giant, obviously, because I'm building it around Giant. Let's see what else. So we got Fireball, Zap, Goblin Barrel, a couple more cards. I'm trying to pick cards that lower level players will have so that they can kind of try this deck out. We'll put in Mini P.E.K.K.A. and then one more. Musketeer. So this deck, if you want to try it out, you can. I'm not going to have any replays over it, but yeah.